Good evening, Razorback fans. Welcome to the one, the only Hog Talk podcast, live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios, or part of the Believe and Buzz Radio networks, where you can hear us on all podcast platforms, as well as Buzz to 106.7 in Central Arkansas. So please like, rate, and review our podcast. All live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark. I'm your host, Porter Hayes. Alongside me is Adam Hall. We're also brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way for your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino card games available to play right now from your phone. Head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use the promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And Adam, Arkansas starts off with a convincing win over Western Carolina. Again, we know that there's things to work on. We know that it wasn't the perfect game, especially when it comes to the running game. I think, number one, if you say that was there was something else that was glaring, I would call you a liar. So, I mean, other than that, I mean, what was glaring to you of that game on Saturday?
Really, it was just the run game. I think that's one of the biggest negatives that you could really take away from it. And when I say negative, I mean just compared to last season, you expected more production out of Rocket. But it is what it is. You know, they weren't. I saw Pittman's interview earlier today, and he was talking about some of the adjustments, not lining up nose to nose or head on with the guys, and that threw him off a little. Just things that they need to button up. He knows what they are, and so I think that's what they'll work on this week. I kind of thought we might see more sacks, but that kind of goes back to what we've talked about in the past. We still got a bunch of pressure. I think there was 20-something QB pressures, 13 hits, I believe. And then, five turnovers. You can't really balk at that by any means.
Yeah, they only got 2 sacks for the game.
Or 2 sacks.
Yeah, and that was on the backup quarterback. So that wasn't in the starting lineup. I totally get that. But even on the defensive side, there was some glaring kind of – you can't help to look at now of – when you decide this team's going to be a 9-win team, you have to look at this team, even if they're playing Western Carolina. Is this a 9-win team? There was a lot of things that were alarming with the run game. You can't run on a team that was picked to finish 5th in their conference. At one point they had a negative 2 yards rushing game. They ended up with 148 yards total rushing, but even if in the second half or so be it, you can't have the runs, that production against a Western Carolina and then end up having that in the SEC. And I know, again, week 1, overreaction, we have time to fix that, because on the other end of that, they did pass blocking so well.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where the hope lies. Okay, they pass blocked very well. You were talking about KJ Jefferson, 18 for 23, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns, only was sacked 1 time. And the guys that really stepped up, you look at the across the board, Andrew Armstrong had 78 yards receiving. Wilson with that long touchdown run to 65 yards on the second play of the game. And then Tesla, what I really liked, they was 25 targets and there was only 5 missed passes. There was only 5 drop passes. And yes, KJ played a hell of a game, but how many times have we seen KJ struggle because the receivers dropped the ball? The receivers kind of, especially like the tight ends, and there was balls that were thrown or he was being rushed. So yes, the offensive line was subpar. They can fix that. But the fact that not only was KJ efficient, but the receivers, we can't sit there and knock the offensive line and then not praise the receivers for coming in, being 2 of them, D2 receivers coming in and not dropping the ball.
I think those 2 are definitely going to play to prove a point that they're better than, everybody labeling them a D2 receiver. And I think that was shown, especially, some of Tesla's hands are just like, I mean, I know they said he's a freak and he's sure hands, he's going to catch everything. And I mean, he absolutely did. I mean, he was going up to get him full extension. You know, a couple of them were into the bot. I mean, his hands were always out in front of him.
Yes. And that's the thing you can't teach, right? I mean, you can't teach speed. You can't teach certain intangibles that a receiver has. And you brought it up perfect. We talked about that leading up into the season. But these guys that have this chip on their shoulder in production. And these were not easy, just okay, they burned the guy and easy catches in the end zone. These were some tough catches in traffic. I mean, that's what really impressed me of no matter if you are a five-star guy, no matter if you come in from a LSU or a Georgia, or you come in and you're wanting to prove a point, that's what you did. Michael brings up the point. Do you think Western Carolina loading the box affected your running? Yes, but it shouldn't have. You just can't. You can't allow it doesn't matter. Game one. If you got the offensive line and the running back and the quarterback, you can't let a team like Western Carolina do that. Now you've got time to fix that. I'm not saying all is lost, but what did we talk about before the season, Adam, when we're talking about if you want to come out and prove you're a 9-win season, you got to come out and put your foot on their throat, and you need to establish the run and then work out. Yes, they have to mix it up, but you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was, first when they first came out on offense, I figured I wasn't shocked by the 65-yard touchdown. Yeah. And when I say that, it was more of them going for it that early in the game, just to prove something. Obviously I think we were all waiting for Rocket to break one for 60, 70 yards. We talked about it in the weeks prior. I don't know what I don't think it was all on him. I saw here in the comments, somebody said that, let me pop it up here. True or false, Rocket Sanders look as fast at 243. That's hard.
Some guys that it takes them, and again, I'm not trying to bring in my team, but we had a running back, Travis Etienne. He plays for the Jaguars. His first step was slow. You let that guy get into his second step in that second gear, you weren't catching him. There is just some running backs built like that. I think Rocket is that type of back. He's a bruiser. So he don't have just that breakaway speed, and he's at 243 now. So he's looking for that hole. That's where the offensive line, you got a guy like Rocket Sanders, you have to open a hole for him. That's the style of run. Here he is. That's why you have AJ Green. That's why you have Debinion. That's why you have Satania that you can come and do these reverses, and you have speedsters. Rocket Sanders is supposed to be your bruiser. And look, I don't care if you're an All-American running back. If you're getting hit behind the line by 2 or 3 guys, you're not going to go anywhere if you wrap your legs up. So, yes, I agree with you. It wasn't all on him because you have to block and give them a seam to get into that second lane where you're going up against linebackers and safeties.
Yeah. And, there's another comment here about we did have Latham out.
Yes.
That was true. I don't know that really affected a whole lot. And I don't want to sound like that that he's going to make or break things. I mean, I know it was a little bit different for Bo Limmer, but this is what they've been practicing. And I know that like with the missed snap or the over snap on KJ, they were talking about the humidity and his hands being wet. And, it's little things like that. It's never an issue until it happens.
Yes.
So, it was one of those, we thought that this offensive line was going to come in and be great, but that was one of my questions coming into the season.
Yeah.
Was the offensive line. And I think that we saw those holes.
You automatically put leadership to production. You automatically, and that's fine, and look, we're not saying here, if we're sitting here saying all is lost and this and that, that's overreaction. We're talking about Saturday's game in particular and what it meant, but what I like about this coaching staff this year is he addressed it. He didn't, pussyfoot around the issue and say, well, we look good. I mean, yes, he did say, I'll take 56-13 win. Yes, of course I would. But when you're able to understand that there was a lot of things that needed to be worked on and not be I didn't get that sense it was a coach speak thing like, well, we'll take the win, but man, we can always work on something. You knew that there was things still to work on.
Oh yeah. And I mean, and for sure that was probably the offensive line, those things that were glaring or were going to be addressed the second they get back out on the practice field. And especially having a coach like Pittman, if there's an offensive line issue, he's going to take that to heart and that be his focal point leading up to the next game.
Yeah, and that's where KJ and Rocket have to stand in.
Oh yeah,
because they're the captains of the team. Hey, look, guys, look, we're trying to do this thing. I'm trying to go out on top, or I'm trying to get this team to a 9-win season and get to a good bowl game. You can't have miscues like that. You can't, and not talking about the misstep, because that's going to happen. I mean, miscues happen. You can't expect the guy to be perfect. And that was the only one that I can remember that I seen that was that way. So if it was one play, that's a wash because things are going to happen. It's just like a guy dropping a wide. Look at that Tennessee play where Milton threw the ball 75 yards and the dude was wide open. He just dropped it. I mean, that's a miscue. It happens, So, but other than that, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised on the linebackers. I was pleasantly surprised about the movement, how the safeties they did. I mean, if you're going up against SEC type defense or an offense, I've seen some plays where if a quarterback with the SEC caliber would have put some touch on that ball, there could have been more scores. But that's why you play these games, and a team that normally wouldn't happen to, it's happening like Western Carolina. You can fix those things opposed to playing a Tennessee. You're playing an Ole Miss, and you're having to fix things on the fly opposed to, we won 56-13. Now we can work on that leading up to Kent State, which, speaking of Kent State, did not have a good go. Their first go round.
Yeah, 50-point loss. Yeah. I looked at the line this morning for the game. I think we're favored by 38. So, I mean, we were favored, I think, 36.5 for the Western Carolina, but you try not to pay too much attention to lines, but I'd probably take the over at 56 in this game if you're a betting person.
Yeah, in those games, look, it's all about what you're wanting to do to game plan for the next week, or how you're going to progress through the season. Just like we did, I said that I would love to see KJ out mid-third quarter. The fourth quarter, of course, because if things aren't clicking the way they should, you're trying to get that offensive line going the way that you want them to go. You get that fixed, and then you make your suggestions. But of course, also with the game in Little Rock, we had a lot of people talking about that. A lot of water running out at halftime, and Daryl here saying, "I've been on board with keeping a game at War Memorial Stadium, but after Saturday, I'm over it." Silver lining: the receivers is good, maybe better than advertised. Even with the opponent, I agree. Because you have to grade these opponents or these receivers on what they were. These were D2 guys coming up to D1, and they looked every bit of a D1 athlete. Look at that second play, that separation and that speed. That is SEC speed. That is your talent and your speed being better than the opponent. That's the plays that you look at that you want from an Arkansas team playing Western Carolina. You should be able to outrun them. You're an SEC team. So, yes, I was pleasantly surprised to see that. I felt like the second and third quarter, they kind of got stagnant and just kind of got complacent a little bit. They were letting Western Carolina kind of show them that, hey, we're here to play, and got hit in the mouth a little bit. But,
yeah, I mean, one thing that I liked, I think it was in the first quarter, Armstrong was running a route and ended up on the sideline. I think it was overthrown by KJ.
Yes. But that was his first incompletion.
It was. But Armstrong's body language after, and the camera was on his face, you could kind of see the look of determination. And I mean, some players are just going to jog back, whatever. And he hopped up and he's just like, no. I mean, he was ready to get that ball and show something.
I seen that on both sides of the ball. And again, what we have talked about, if we're going to be critical, I have to praise. I said when they come into this season, I want this team to play like they're playing SEC teams, or they're playing. They don't play down the competition. These boys were playing and flying around the ball like they were playing in LSU. They were playing in A&M. They were playing in Ole Miss. So I applaud their effort. It was 100 degrees out there. They're playing in Little Rock. You could go on and on about the negatives around the stadium, but they turned that into a 56-13 win. So We can nitpick. Of course, it is nitpicking because, again, the standard we're putting this team at this year. We're going to do that every single week we're going to say the things they did wrong, that we're going to say the things they need to work on. But yet, for them to still produce, and even if it was a 56-20 win or whatever, they showed a lot of heart out there, and like they're really on a mission, like you said, determination to make sure that this is a different year.
Oh yeah, and I mean we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we just came in here and praised every little aspect and didn't talk about the negatives or the things that needed to be worked on. You know, one of my biggest gripes of the game was when Western Carolina kicked that field goal at the end, just because I had picked 55 to 10.
They've seen that. I think they looked at our score prediction,
something
Hog Talk and Hog Sports, and they're like, "Look, this guy's probably got $20 on it. He wants to go down to Rib Crib and get him something to eat. We're going to kick a field goal."
Oh yeah,
but flip out of it, I think they still want a game plan like they're lining up. A lot of critical about it, but it's like you got to look. They come into this game. Sorry to say it. Spoiler alert. They come into this game knowing they were going to lose the game. So why not build on? Hey, we got a last-second situation. What if we were in a game where this was a game-winning situation? Let's line up in field goal formation. Let's work on it because they're trying to work on things just like Arkansas is.
When I look at it too, like when the people that gripe about that stuff like that, I mean, it's the defense's job to stop. So, it's one of those, they could have kneeled. They don't have to kneel. There's not a written rule that you have to. So be it. You
play to the whistle.
Exactly.
I play to the whistle, and the only people who gripe are only people that had money on the game.
Exactly.
That's just, but I loved the man, Clark. I know he gets a lot of crap but man, for him to stick through thick and thin and to come back, get him another interception. Happy for the guy. I'll tell you what, Landon Jackson.
Man.
This dude, listen, he is built like a kickboxer.
Oh yeah.
That video I posted of him where he says he eats 2 ribeyes.
2 sides, yeah.
The way his upper body is, and he just looks like he's built like a kickboxer. And I was going to say something, but I didn't want them taking it as a troll or like I was making fun of him. But there was a kickboxer on Street Fighter. And he just reminds me of that build, this tall, lanky guy built up top. But that's like, I wouldn't want to be in the open field tackling, just being able to tackle in the open field like that. There was a lot of effort that I was enjoying. But yeah, you talk about the guy putting production. There was a lot of talk about, okay, he gained a lot of weight, but can he produce? That guy come out and produced.
Oh, yeah. I think he's definitely going to be an anchor on that defensive line. I mean, you look at him, and I don't know. That kid, you cannot – seeing that he's 281 pounds, I'm just like, where is it? But, I mean, he is just built like there's not many football players built like he is.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. And I think that's the way he was when they had that on Hogs Plus, our friends at Hogs Plus give us the great inside information and videos behind the scenes. He was in that chair and his knees were up near his chest, and it was like, it's all upper body. I mean, some legs, but I mean, for him to come in, I would hate seriously to get hit by the guy. Question or a comment in the comment section. Would you say our defense is much improved, even though it was Western Carolina 4-pick surprise? I wouldn't say much improved because I want to see against the BYU. I want to see where this defense stacks up, and I want to see them down the road. I mean, let's see where this depth comes in. I'm not ready to say after one game they're much improved. If they would have just totally dominated, got a bunch of sacks, and of course, yes, they had 4 picks, but I mean, when you're down and you're trying to fight your way back in the game, quarterbacks are going to make errant throws. They're going to throw it into coverage. They're going to allow the defense to have more chances. I'm not saying it was all Western Carolina's fault that Arkansas got the turnovers. I'm saying you're going to have more of a chance of having that because they're throwing the ball a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to say much improved. And this isn't a knock game one, but, we gave up 291 yards. And so that's something I looked at was, yes, we had 5 turnovers, but we still almost gave up 300 yards.
And this is where I don't disagree, but I will disagree.
Okay.
I would much rather them, because they had 220 yards passing altogether. They only had, they had 99 yards, so they only had 64 yards total rushing.
Yeah.
So I'll take that, because listen, in today's game, I'll take 200. Now, if they passed for over 300, if they went 350, if they made it seem like they had the upper advantage on our secondary or our defense. Now, of course, if some of them throws were on time or, beat our coverage, then possibly. But I'll take 227 yards passing, but then you look at the yards rushing. And of course, I mean, even if you take the, let's see, Cole Gonzalez had a net of -13. As a team, they had a net of -12, but they gained 99 yards. So I guess I'm saying the sacks, they had the sack yards. And I wish they would change that rule. I wish they would put that on the passing yards opposed to the rushing yards.
I agree.
Because that gives you more of a true. So I'll look at the total yards. So 99 yards rushing. I'll take that. I mean, I would take that in the very first game, because you look at their leading rusher only had 38 yards on 4 carries. Branson, and I don't know. I didn't watch Western Carolina enough to see where this guy was at in the game. This could have been their leading rusher come in the fourth quarter. Desmond Reed looked like he was the guy. He had 11 carries, only 21 yards. So other than Branson Adams at 9.5, you had Markel Townsend only had 3 yards per carry. Cameron. So, I mean, it was a little discrepancy of, you can't let, your rushing defense and giving up 4-5 yards a carry. So there is stuff to work on there, but I guess the best blessing in disguise is how good they were on their pass blocking gives me hope that they can fix the run blocking.
Yeah, and I mean, like we saw, I saw in another comment, there was, the playbook seemed a little vanilla. That's what we all expected. I mean, they're not going to come out and show their plays. They're not going to come out and show their offensive stunts. KJ hardly ran besides that 17-yard touchdown run. So, I mean,
it was shocking, but it was awesome.
Well, and I mean, he took the ball away because it was not, Rocket was going to get hit if he handed that ball off. Yeah. So KJ had to take it. So, I mean,
job. That's why you do the RPO. That's why you do the quarterback rate. And that shows his growth. But that also shows the relationship him and Rocket have. Look, if Rocket and him didn't have that relationship and that trust, Rocket would have probably tried to just hold on to that a little bit more. And that causes a turnover. It don't cause a loss. It's plays like that causes turnovers. And I want to bring up a small point right quick on that play. That shows the mental growth of this team. The ego. We're talking about these small wins, these small plays. Remember plays like that when we're looking forward to this team. If you're willing to let KJ be like, I got this, let me have it, and you let him do that, and he turns it into a positive, or you just have the trust in him, even if it turned into a 2-yard gain or a negative play. That trust prevents turnovers, and that's going to be huge come SEC play.
Well, and we see it more often than not, and especially, college, pro, wherever, where they make that handoff, they still go ahead, and it's a tackle for loss, it's a fumble on the play, it's whatever, negative yardage all around. So, kudos to them to do what he did, and then just the icing on the cake was it being a touchdown run too.
Yeah, and that's again where that separates where you have that experience That's what you should expect out of a play, just like that passing play where you just outrun the defense. It's kind of what you surprise, And Jacoby, I know he come in only did 2 for 2 for 28, but for somebody to come in the way he did, poised, calm. Yes, it was at the last 2 for 2, 28 yards and a touchdown. Hey, that's what you want. That's what you see. Like you see these preseason games and these guys are coming in and that you give them one drive. Hey, man, I went 2 for 2, 28 yards and scored a touchdown. That just shows that if he's going to do that against Western Carolina, you're building that confidence to come in. And, hey, KJ ran the ball. I think it was a couple weeks ago we were saying. There's going to be those drives where KJ runs the ball 4 or 5 times because he wants to take control of this game. Arkansas gets a quick defensive out. What if you got to put a guy in like that? What if he needs that break? He comes in and runs a series. you have that confidence. You let KJ get that break that he's much well needed.
Oh, yeah, and I think poised is the absolute perfect word for Criswell whenever he came in. But, make the most of those opportunities and those chances when you get them, which is like, even in the NFL, guys trying to do in preseason. Brandon Allen, and this is not a shot at Brandon Allen, has made a career in the NFL being a backup because he is poised when he comes in. He plays the preseason well, and he keeps getting signed as a backup quarterback. But it's been 5, 6, 7, 8 years now that he's been doing this.
Yeah.
So, some guys, this is what they're built for.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying Criswell's a career backup quarterback. That's not what I'm saying. But Criswell's making the most of his opportunity when he gets it.
Yeah. And the fact that he chooses, that just says a lot about Brandon Allen's character, because you see a lot of guys that they do that for 4 or 5 seasons. They're out. They can't handle the fact that they're a career backup quarterback. There's nothing wrong with that. There's only 31, 32 positions. Not everybody can be the starting quarterback. And I think that's where a lot of this gets lost. People don't realize how hard it is to get into college, much less get drafted to the NFL. And then all these years, you're still fighting for a starting position. That's not a knock to Brandon Allen at all.
Hey, I'll go be a practice squad quarterback for a few $100,000 a year.
Yeah. $600,000.
Yeah.
Yes. We talking about practice.
Exactly. So.
Before we head to break, though, we got about 4 minutes to our break. Hey, Max Fletcher, 5 points, 245 yards, 49 yards average. But more importantly, again, I don't care who the opponent was. There was 3 punts in a row. He totally flip the field. And I want to bring this up because Brian just asked about Max Fletcher. Look, I promise you I didn't see this comment before I said it. So we're kind of thinking, and, we're kind of
on the same boat. Yeah.
But no, field, that's what we said. You flip the field, and doing that is just as important as any aspect of this game. You're on the 40-yard line and you're able to punt the ball 40, 50 yards. And the opposing team is sitting there starting at the 10 opposed to the 30 or 40. You say you're in the end of the second quarter and you want to prevent somebody from scoring before halftime, and then they get the ball right back. You punt that daggum thing and it goes to the 10, 15-yard line. That totally changes the game plan of opposed to we're going to go in halftime, of course we're going to try to score, but I'm talking about the aggressiveness. They're going to try to go down and score, try to get in field goal range. If you punt the ball and you're not flipping the field and they get to start at the 30 or the 40, now we're talking about, instead of field goal, we're talking about, hey, let's try to score a touchdown and get the ball back and go on. That's what I get for that vibe. And I'm telling you, him punting the ball like that was, it was amazing to see.
Yeah, I was unsure about Fletcher coming into the season, just from what we saw previously. I was expecting that 32 to 36 yard punt average, which I was hoping for better, but to see him come out and average, 49 yards a punt was just absolutely a blessing and a good thing to see.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're going to look at that, and of course, pressure and stuff like that. When you're playing SEC teams, but it was just a breath of fresh air. We're talking about what we're used to seeing per se, and it was just those are another one of those small wins that you're going to see that, and you really want to. And I want when you're watching these games that won Arkansas, they're kind of going to win, or look for those small things. Start looking at those and point out those intangibles, point out those things that's different, that you're like, okay, this is what I see different in this team. I see that, this team's improved here, not just a talent wise. What do you think is going to help them move on? And of course, next week with Kent State coming in, playing in Fayetteville for the first time this season, it's going to add a lot of extra emotions, and really finally a lot of these guys playing in front of the Fayetteville faithful for the first time. But like I said, I'm still standing on where I didn't see anything that, unless of course the offensive line starts really showing differences, if they come out and have a repeat performance next week against Kent State on the O line, I might start kind of worried about my 9-win prediction, but I mean, you sure that up and you get that run blocking along with the pass blocking. I still stand by the whole that's why I still stand by it, because they did a great job pass blocking as well.
Yeah, and I think, there were some questions that, maybe not the public were privy to or knew about. I mean, there were offensive line questions leading up to last week or this last weekend. So I think there's still a few things that they're working on, and it kind of showed Saturday. So, we'll see what's changed or fixed this coming Saturday to see where they're going to be at.
And that game's 3 p.m. on the SEC Network against Kent State in Fayetteville. We are going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to reiterate our thoughts on the game overall, and we're going to continue on our conversation with what was a crazy SEC national college football week with a few upsets and a few upsets that people said was an upset before the game, but then it happened. There was a lot of people backtracking on the team that kind of upset old Browse, but we'll talk about that right after the break.
Attention DIYers and home improvement enthusiasts. Are you searching for the right tools and the supplies to tackle your next project? Look no further than Mentor's Hardware Store. With locations in Ozark, Alma, and Clarksville, our vast selection of hardware and building materials is sure to have everything you need, whether you're fixing a leaky faucet or building a new deck. Plus, our knowledgeable staff is always on hand to offer expert advice and guidance. And with our competitive prices and convenient online ordering, Mentor's Hardware Store is your one-stop shop for all your DIY needs. Visit us today and let's build something amazing together. Are you in need of legal representation? Look no further than the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson. As the oldest law firm in the River Valley, we have been serving our clients for over 100 years, with locations in Ozark, Fort Smith, and Spring. Our experienced team of attorneys provide expert guidance and advocacy in a wide range of legal areas, including personal injury, family law, criminal defense, and more. Trust in our history and experience to get the results you deserve. Contact the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson today at 479-782-8813. That's 479-782-8813. Are you looking for a place to grab a cold drink and some delicious food? Look no further than Arkansas Brewing Company. Located at 201 South 1st Street in beautiful downtown Ozark, our establishment offers a wide selection of craft beers and tasty eats. But what sets us apart is our welcoming atmosphere and friendly staff. At Arkansas Brewing Company, you'll always feel like part of the family. So visit Destiny and Christopher Brockett and staff today and see for yourself what makes us the go-to spot for locals and visitors alike. Arkansas Brewing Company, come for the drinks and stay for the friends. Searching for premium brewery products that will take your daily routine to the next level? Look no further than Sterling Soap Company. Our handmade soaps, aftershaves, and balms are made with only the finest ingredients that give you the ultimate grooming experience. With a variety of scents to choose from, there's something for everyone. Plus, our products are crafted in small batches to ensure the highest level of quality. So why wait? Visit www.sterlingsoap.com or visit our retail store at 16 West Walnut Street in Paris, Arkansas. Shop our collection and discover the difference for yourself. Upgrade your grooming routine with Sterling Soap Company.
And want to welcome you back to the Hog Talk podcast. And Adam, before we switch topics, I guess what we'll start doing, after every game, I guess we'll give an overall grade of what we thought of the team. And I'll start us off. I want to say B+. Because the only thing that you could really say was maybe miscues on the coverage on the defense, the O-line, not being able. So I will go B+ on that aspect because the efficiency of KJ, 4 interceptions. Being able to hold them to 13 points. So there was a lot of positives that outweighed the negatives, but B+ for me, because there is still some things you need to work on. And again, if they weren't as well on the pass blocking, I would drop it all the way down to a C. But again, reiterating, knowing that they were able to pass block well and allow KJ to be so efficient gives me hope that they'll get that stuff fixed.
Yeah, I was in that B range. I know I had to withhold from responding to a lot of comments that were trying to give D's and whatever and just putting it all on the run game. if you gave us grade of a D and it was solely because of the run game or offensive line, then I think you need to reevaluate your grading system. But, I saw several that were like, oh, give them 6s. I'm going to guess that's a 60%, which is also, in that I don't, I think a lot of people were just expecting more, but let's actually look at it and break it down. And I think with the O-line and the run game, it put them in a B.
Yeah. But here's the deal. It's not like, we always talk about how irrational the fans can be sometimes, but I will take that, because if they're saying, that just depends on how much weight you hold when it comes to the run game and the O-line, and that goes on the expectations of what you had with KJ and Rocket. So I understand, you're coming into this expecting KJ and Rocket to both have 80, 90, and 100 yards rushing each. I mean, so when they don't produce that way, and that was the main focal point of the offense, I can totally see why fans are saying, well, we only give them, say a D or a C. So, I mean, I'm not going to come on here and say that, well, I have them at a B, B plus because of what I've seen, but I still respect the fact that how they feel, depending on how much weight they hold when it comes to the weight of the running game and the O-line.
Yeah. So, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah. And, moving on to, what was a crazy, what would you say was the biggest when it comes to, I'm going to give you 2 games. Was you more surprised about Florida State beating LSU, or was you more surprised that Colorado beat TCU?
I think, well, that's kind of tough. I didn't expect LSU to get smacked like they did. I do not think LSU deserved or have shown anything for that number 5 ranking that they had, which, that's preseason coming into things. I was shocked at the way that they got smacked around. For some reason, I wasn't as surprised that Colorado beat up TCU like they did.
Yeah.
I kind of expected TCU to somehow win it at the end or whatever, but it didn't happen. And, one thing I was looking at were, how some of the former Razorback transfers did, the last play for Colorado on defense. You had Jordan Dominic and Miles Slusher that, got the quarterback rush and then the tackle. So, that was something that some folks, I think, well, obviously your Coach Prime talk is going to get overshadowed, but
yeah. And a lot of people can't handle that, I want to bring it up. They've done that with everybody that's been that brash and arrogant and talked. You look at Lane Kiffin, you look at Dabo, you look at Ryan Day, you look at Brian Kelly, you look at all these coaches. They don't, you look outside of Nick Saban, who's this buttoned up business type coach who goes out there and he set the standard for college football. When you got these guys that come in and they're outlandish, they're talking, they don't know how to handle it. They don't do the coach speak. Deion's quick to call the people out who said, and I want to defend him on this point. It wasn't like this was a 3-point game. This was a toss up. And the fact that, well, TCU can win this game in the 4th. This was a game they were laughing. And these are the Bear who used to be on College Football Game Day and his guys that were talking about, I'm running to the bank. I'm going to bet 4 games. If they give Colorado a 4-game over under, I'm running to the bank and laughing. I mean, they were laughing, saying it's at 3. I wish it would go back to 4. And then you go to College Game Day. Everybody but Pat McAfee was saying TCU is just going to steamroll. So for that to happen, I don't care what we want to say about, well, TCU was overrated, this and that. Colorado was a 1-win team last year. I don't care if you bring in Travis Hunter and Shadir Sanders. You bring in coach. That's 3 people on an 85 roster team where you brought in 48 new players. And for them to overachieve, and the fact I posted the video of, and I don't know if you got to see it before we started recording, Deion and Shadir went to a camp. and they had talked about this certain offensive coordinator who was at TCU who just kind of brushed him off, didn't get. Now, if that's a coach speak or he's just wanting to say that to throw ammunition out there, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the multiple media posts out there, and I read the interview, and I mean, it could be coach speak, it could be he's using it as motivation. Could Kendall Briles looked at it and been like, well, his son's or his dad's Deion Sanders, so I'm going to focus on maybe showing these other guys more attention because he has one of the best football players ever as his father, and that could help him. We don't know. Deion keeps receipts. He's proven that.
Mm-hmm.
He proved that in the post game. One thing that I don't think was shown enough was Deion's pre-game speech to his team in the locker room.
Loved it.
Everybody wants to talk, the receipts and how he is with the media and whatever, but how he is with his players is undeniably one of the best things coaching-wise that he can do.
Man, you see how Pittman is.
Mm-hmm.
See how Musselman is. You see how everybody is. And you know what? I mean, y'all can agree with it or not. And I'm not one to have really ever much played this card, but there's times where I feel like it's warranted. And I'm not bringing this to kick anybody down. It's just a thing that it is looked at differently when an African-American coach says things like that, because Dabo has been like that. Yes, everybody, hates him and stuff, but it is looked at a different lens when an African-American coach. And I think at times it's not fair because nobody at the beginning of Dabo's career were they hoping for him to lose. They just straight didn't think he could win at Clemson. You look at Lane Kiffin and how he is. They just straight wanted him to lose. They didn't give him a chance. They didn't think. So when it happens with Deion and they don't like it, but then he calls them out on that, I think it holds weight because it is true to a certain extent. I'm not one to sit there and throw it on every aspect. But in this aspect, I do see why he gets criticized a little bit more and why he comes at it, because I think it's true. I think there is some weight there when he feels a certain way because of who he is.
Yeah, and I mean, he's going into every game really at Colorado that, if he wins, great. Media writers are going to find something to talk about, whatever. When he loses, because the day will come that Colorado loses, they are going to be bashing him left and right. He could not really go into that game and just get a pat on the shoulder for winning.
No, and that's what really pissed me off about it, because it's like you can't sit here and say this was a 20-point dog. He had no chance, and then he wins. They're like, well, it's because TCU was overrated. It was because you're automatic, and that's what really got me to it holds weight, is because they gave them no credit hardly. It's like they were just trying to make an excuse of why they was wrong on picking the game like that, opposed to giving the man credit for, look, how many other coaches can come in? It doesn't matter. Just like what we were talking about. It don't matter if it's Colorado or Alabama or Georgia. Who can come in, brand new coach, brand new staff, and bring in 48 new players? And of course, we're taking over a team that was 1-11, and you're playing the defending national champion or the defending
runner-up.
I mean, it's not like it would be totally different if we were out of whack on this because it was Utah State or Fresno State or Nevada. This was TCU. Yes, they had a bit of a drop off, but there was one goon on Twitter and social media that was saying that Colorado was the worst. Other than UMass, they had the worst FBS roster. Mm-hmm. So you got to sit there and take what you want with it. But, beside that game, I mean, LSU was the same way. We got to hold them to the fire.
Yeah,
they were coming in. We're going to win the national championship. It's our year. Brian Kelly's doing this, and then you get smacked.
And for Jaden, I mean, I kind of looked at yesterday for Jaden Daniels, kind of put me back to everybody talking about Anthony Richardson being the Heisman winner last year going into the season. It's one of those that I don't see how Jaden Daniels has been put so far ahead of KJ and everybody else when it comes to quarterbacks in the SEC. I mean, they did the same thing with Anthony Richardson last year, and look what happened to him.
They do it every year. And listen, if you're a very, very 100%, because look over my right shoulder, if you're or left shoulder, if you're a very, very, very pro SEC fan, you're not going to want to hear what I'm about to say. They do it every stinking year to an SEC team. They will hype up all these SEC teams. There's always 3 to 4 to 5. We're always the best. And then 2 to 3 of them flop. You're really hoping that 2 of them hold on. Go back to Auburn and Alabama and Georgia and LSU. There's always been 1 or 2. You've never had a league that has been 4, 5 solid in the end like you've thought. There's always been that quarterback, like you said with Richardson. They done it with the Hill kid at Texas A&M. He had that amazing game against Thrill Hill, put him up the Heisman, had that great game against Carolina, and then flopped.
Yep, Kenny Trill Hill was one of those that. And then I feel like, I figured Milton would be getting more talk than Jaden Daniels did.
He did. Oh God, when he threw that 70-yard ball. I don't know if I can say this with the PG. Hopefully the buzz don't really get, but every announcer, they were just going. They were going crazy. Right. It was, oh my God, there it is. But that's talent.
Yeah,
you got to praise that. But I got your point on that. But yeah, when he threw that bomb and that guy missed it, oh my God, they were just. Oh, if Gary Danielson and what was the other guy? Oh God, who's the other guy with
Brian Lundquist?
Yeah, Brian. If they were on the call, holy God, I'd have turned the channel.
Yeah,
it would have been insufferable.
Yeah, and I think I was looking around. Some of these teams, other SEC teams, they started slower, and we're looking in the second quarter, and I think Georgia was up 7-0, then 14-0 in the second quarter. And you're thinking, oh man, this isn't the same Georgia team. And then they come out in the second half and they win like 48-3 or whatever it was. So it was a slow start for multiple teams. I think obviously you saw that Alabama set with Milroe was going to be theirs, and that man is a monster.
Yes.
I haven't seen a quarter. KJ is a big quarterback, but the muscle that Milroe has is, and I thought it was a crazy stat too, that he was the first Alabama quarterback ever to throw for 3 touchdowns and rush for 2 in one game. But you look back, I guess Alabama's had mostly game managers that, it didn't really happen that often.
Yeah, but then again, you also got to look at the last 2 with Hurts and Tua. So yes, it is put it in grand scheme of it is the first time in history of having that happen. There's a lot of history behind Alabama. They had 194 yards passing and only had 48 yards rushing. So yes, it was great. It's not ever been done before. It was one of them stats. Well, he was the first person, on a 3-2 count to have a 400 batting average. It's one of them obscure stats. You're playing Middle Tennessee. Come on. Really. But to me, what I said pre-season, you're giving this team what we call the rat poison, where it all started. And I'm telling you, if this team turns that rat poison and you got a guy like Milroe, like, all right, you want to doubt me? Because outside of Arkansas, let's all Arkansas fans put your glasses on and put your hats on just for a second and sit in the corner. You know how you get when KJ's disrespected, or when you feel like, look at Stetson Bennett for Georgia. Think about a guy like Milroe of Alabama. You're at the most prestigious university in college football. You're the starting quarterback, and they're like, oh, he ain't got it. He ain't nothing. What kind of chip do you think that's on his shoulder? What kind of pressure you think that puts on him? He's coming into the starting quarterback at Alabama, and he's got to follow a Tua. He's got to follow a McCarron. He's got to follow a Hurts. So for him to come out and have that performance, I don't care if it was against Roast Beef State, that's impressive. Because if he's going to do that now, what's he going to do in a few weeks when they get an SEC play?
Yeah, and to touch on that, like you're saying, with the fans and how they react to what they might take as KJ being disrespected. I read an article, I think it was maybe yesterday afternoon, I forget where it was from, but it was about should Arkansas fans be disrespected or feel disrespected because of Tim Tebow Saturday morning before the game. He had 5 basically SEC quarterback headlines going into this season. It wasn't his top 5 quarterbacks. It was 5 headlines. And KJ Jefferson was not mentioned at it. And then fans just kind of started, and this article was written too, I think, because if I remember correctly, Tim Tebow is going to be speaking at either SAU, I think.
Okay.
Coming up this week. And they were like, just wondering how people were going to react, or is he going to answer to it? He shouldn't have to answer to it. He's going to have to in Arkansas, exactly. But it was the 5 headlines. So it was newcomers, and it was Jaden Daniels and Milton. And then it was newcomers coming into the SEC. So it wasn't a knock on KJ by any means, but that's how it's already been interpreted.
Because what is the expectation for KJ? Razorback fans, let's talk about that. And he's trying to go out as the best quarterback at Arkansas. He's trying to go out as another 9-win season. You're putting him up against other quarterbacks and storylines of national champions. Can LSU get back to the college football playoff? Can Alabama get back to the national playoff? Look at Georgia. And if they weren't replacing so many quarterbacks in the league, I could see where there might be a storyline for KJ, but there's, in the grand scheme, this is no disrespect, but what's the storyline? It was funny. We had Brendan Marcello on, and he made an excellent point that us Razorback fans and podcasters and people who are in the Arkansas media and content creators, we look at the SEC network to get majority of our news and our highlights and our information from the national media. So that's what we base it off of, is just what we see from the SEC network guys, Dari and all them guys. He said, but the majority of like the national media see it like him. Dude lives in Northwest Arkansas. He used to cover Arkansas. He's covered Auburn. I mean, this guy, so if it was funny because if you don't come off with a pro Arkansas take, you're going to get hammered, and just like Tebow. But when you look at it, what is the storyline? What would you have wanted him to say? So you want to say that Tebow didn't include KJ. What would you have wanted him to say?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't look at when Arkansas is left out or KJ's left out of this talk. I mean, I don't look at it necessarily like disrespect, but like you said, what's there? I mean, he's going to come in and potentially break every record, not all of them, but almost. And he's going to go out a winner. I mean, it's one of those, what else can you do besides maybe get, and I mean, this is just, yes, being probably far-fetched, but other than he's won bowl games, he's gotten to bowl games. So, I mean, what's the next step? Getting to a New Year's Six, getting to the CFP. I mean, he's only got, this is his last year. I'm going to be real and think and say that that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, in this comment right here, the expectation is he has to exceed expectations and win a big game or two. Okay. But that's a school perspective. I'm talking about SEC conference as a whole. Daryl Patrick says the same thing. Does KJ go down as the best Razorback quarterback? Okay, those are all ideas within the school program. And I get it if, again, there wasn't so much quarterback turnover in the SEC, but those are school expectations. Those are fan expectations. Tim Tebow guys at and Rogers and Laura Rutledge and those guys, Fonbaum, they're not really, if it happens and it gets closer to that, then they might be like, oh, KJ's going to go down as the greatest quarterback at Arkansas, but they're not really putting him in that top echelon of, it being a headline, because it's not a national headline. It's not a big conference headline. It's an Arkansas headline.
Yeah. When your team is projected on a lot of fronts, a lot of media to go 7-5, 8-4, you're not going to garner a lot of national attention.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just the fact of how it is. If you were on the cusp of the CFP last season, and then that you might be a headline. If you were on the cusp of an SEC championship, that's going to be a headline. So I look at it right now. I mean, the headlines for KJ, it's all school specific. Go out as the greatest Razorback quarterback ever. There'll be, hey, want to mine for him? Hey, I'd love KJ to be the guy to beat Alabama finally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so let's, you want those things as a Razorback fan, but you also, I mean, on the grand scheme of things, Arkansas's not there. So that's why they're not going to get that attention.
Yeah, and again, it says, I get what you're saying, but if he beats LSU or Alabama, then he demands attention, and he will get that. Now,
but he's beaten LSU before.
Again, this is preseason comments and expectations opposed to, I'm telling you right now, Jacob, if KJ beats LSU or Alabama, especially after LSU just got smacked by Florida State, and KJ does that, they're going to talk about him. Look, Dari, all the guys, and Ryan and Marty and Ryan, all the guys at the SEC Network, they'll be talking about it. I'm talking about before the season, before the headlines coming into the season. I can see why they left him off, because it's just not. It doesn't have that SEC, because Arkansas is a middle of the pack SEC team. We're not talking about Alabama, Georgia. Look, you got your top three teams replacing people, Daniels, and that's the thing. And then of course you see his performance against Florida State, and you're like, well, was he what we thought? So I'm not saying that KJ is not the best quarterback in the conference. To me, he is. But
go ahead. I mean, I look at it like he's beat LSU before.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, us throwing out there. I mean, it's been done. He's done it.
Yeah.
So I don't look at that if he beats them, if they were as high as ranked when Arkansas plays them, great. If they were still ranked number 5 when Arkansas plays them and Arkansas won, fantastic. We can talk about it. But KJ has beaten LSU before, so I don't feel like that's anything. I'm not going to say it's not great. It's not, but it's not new because it's happened. Alabama is something that has not happened.
Exactly. And the only way outside, KJ would have to get his team to the SEC championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of Bama win. If he gets beat by Bama, all right, to be considered the best, you're going to have to go win the SEC. You're going to have to get to the SEC championship game. Not say win it, because we're talking about, what would set him apart as the greatest Razorback quarterback of all time. But also, I mean, here's the big conundrum that we're not really thinking about. How much do we put into this extra year that these guys are getting? I know it's fair, not fair. They're getting an extra year, but how much of that weight holds into had an extra year to get these numbers going?
We see that thrown around a lot, especially when guys don't get drafted.
Yeah.
Or they should have taken the extra year, but you got to look at, a lot of KJ's, I mean, I think he's second now in touchdown responsibility. So, I take that with a lot of weight. Because when you look at the completions and attempts, I mean, he's never going to get up there with the likes of, Mallett and Tyler Wilson and Brandon out. And, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to be feasible. I look at the touchdown responsibility and the actual, scoring production versus, some of the other stats.
Yeah, he's going to have to do, for him to be the best. I said, he's going to have to win 9-10 games. I mean, and I'm stretching it 9. All right, 9 wins, you got to beat LSU, or not. I wouldn't say LSU. 9 wins, you got to beat Texas A&M and Alabama. You can't lose to, so put 3 in there. You can't lose to Missouri, which I've said that's a guarantee that's not going to happen. But to set yourself apart, you got to beat Alabama. And you got to beat Texas A&M. You got to do it in the same year, all right? Because it's tough. But look, you're talking about the best. You're talking about what's gonna create you. Look, Mallett got you to a Cotton Bowl. Stoner. Sugar Bowl. Sorry, Sugar Bowl. Look what Stoner's done. Look what Wilson's done. What's KJ gonna do opposed to I mean, can you really say that the greatest quarterback ever to come out of Arkansas got you to a Liberty Bowl or an Outback Bowl? I mean, is that enough? And that's just a question. Is that enough to put him up at the top?
It's a good question to ask.
So, but I mean, and like again, we're only in game one.
Exactly.
A lot of time to, talk about this team and a lot of things coming up. It's Kent State's coming up next, 3 p.m. Of course, Fayetteville. I mean, it's awesome that football's back. It's awesome that we're able to talk about some good things. We're not talking about a struggle win over a mediocre team. So there's a lot more positives than there is when it comes to this team. So
yes. And folks, the game, like he said, is at 3 p.m. on SEC Network. I know that'll be asked 20 more times over the next few days, but
we got
Google is your friend.
That or just look, we got it pinned on our profile. So
exactly.
And every week we'll have that. We'll put up a game day or a game week post. We'll tell you, what time, of course, if they pull the shenanigans of changing it, or if there's a game time change, we'll keep you updated. But Adam, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
I do not. Enjoy the cooler weather that's coming up.
Yes, I seen that. I've got a game to watch here in a second.
You got Clemson.
Yeah, so we're currently down right now, and I'm very superstitious about how I watch it. But for Adam Hall, this is Porter Hayes again. We're brought to you by Bet Online, and we will catch you next week after the Kent State game.